Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Claire McDonnell Liu is a practicing naturopathic nutritionist based in beautiful Busselton, Australia. Originally based in the United Kingdom, Claire has experience treating patients in the National Health Services, private medical practices in the United Kingdom and Australia, and in her private clinic. A former environmental consultant, Claire retrained as a nutritionist following her experiences of using food as medicine to help her own young children overcome debilitating eczema, alopecia, and epilepsy. Claire has over 10 years' experience in delivering ketogenic and restricted carbohydrate dietary support and training for weight management and patients with diabetes or prediabetes. She's a regular content contributor to Low Carb Down Under, the Nutrition Coalition, and is an ambassador for the Public Health Collaboration in the United Kingdom. She most enjoys helping families and individuals to gain control of their health and weight with straightforward guidance, accountability, and resources. She is a co-author of the Sugar-Free Family online course, along with Professor Tim Noakes, Dr. David Unwin, and Dr. Peter Bruckner, all of which are former guests on our podcast. You can find Claire at www.leafy, that's leaafie.com. Claire, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
How lovely to be here and to finally get a chance to meet you. I'm a really big fan of your show, Casey.
That's very, very kind. I'm a big fan of your show as well. You do great interviews on your podcast. We had some real challenges trying to set this up. You were in Perth, Australia. I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. That is not exactly the same time zone. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So we have to be either up very, very early or up very, very late. So I really appreciate you accommodating the time zone differences. We were kind of marveling before we started recording that we were even able to do this to begin with. Technology in 2024 is pretty cool. So I'm really grateful that we get to chat.
Yeah, me too. And it was definitely worth persisting and playing tag with you to get it sorted. And I just feel really lucky that even in a remote area that I've moved to, fairly remote, that I still get to connect with people like you. And I have my own podcast now, and I really feel motivated when I have these meetups and these discussions and these chats. It's a really good way to keep learning, keep connected.
Yeah, it's really fantastic. As I look through your podcast and see all the people you've hosted, I see a lot of familiar names and people that both of us have gotten to meet and talk to. What has it meant to you to start a podcast and be able to talk with these people one-on-one?
Well, I think it's like I'm saying, it's about me staying connected was one thing and learning. I get that a real great sense of uplift after I've had a conversation with somebody like yourself, or one of my guests. And I tend to be, because that it's a huge time sink doing a podcast, as you well know. So I do tend to be quite choosy about the shows that I go on, and the people I meet and the people I have on mine. And that's it's really because I want to connect authentically with people I feel like are putting good work out in the world. So I mean, my main aim of the podcast was for me to do my little bit to help to progress what I think is really important: metabolic health solutions and options, and real authentic options for people. Nothing salesy or spammy, but those people out there in the world like yourself who are pushing really good choices for people and helping to elevate that information. Because without those people that we're talking to, without these types of podcasts and these forums, families would not be accessing super important information that it really can make the difference to their longevity, but their quality of life. So it actually means a real big amount to me. So I'm happy to contribute, and then have to keep learning.
I love that. It's really interesting. I don't think there's many topics out there that would drive that type of passion and desire to share a message. It seems like this is such a message that is so hard to find, and it's only kind of grassroots movements that are people talking about this kind of thing. But once this topic grabs you and you start to see the results and you start to try to share this, you can't really stop. And you're right. Like, it's not about selling anything or trying to spam people with stuff. It's just you really, really want to get the information out there in any way that you can. It's really an interesting kind of topic in that way.
I think you've hit on something there that Sometimes I feel like I'm talking to people locally, or I'm having conversations, and it's nutrition and the particular styles of nutrition can sound a little tribal, a little boring, perhaps, when I'm talking to my teenage son, or they don't understand where the passion comes from, but it's actually experiencing the power of food. If you told me maybe 15 years ago that I would be starting my own podcast and talking to people and engaging with people and going to conferences and talking a great deal about nutrition and what people could be putting in their bodies and how it would fuel them, I would have thought you were mad, because it just wasn't a passion of mine at the time, until I saw the difference in my own family, and not just seeing the difference, and it was huge difference to me personally, to my family, but also I feel like there's a huge sense for me of wanting to work in this space because a sense of injustice. I feel that it's just not okay not to give people this information, and then they don't have to eat this way. I'm not prescriptive. If this information was out there that you're putting out in the world and others, and people could make a choice to take it, leave it, try it, feel the difference, feel the energy and the better sleep and better immunity and better mental health now, as we know, then I go off and do my painting or do whatever else and live a quite happy life. But I feel like I've just got on a mission, because I'm really angry about it. I feel we weren't given information that was fundamental to our children's health, and still decades and decades and decades after people have been pushing ketogenic diet, for example, it's still, people are not being told, and people are still being dissuaded from these diet choices.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If you went off and just did your painting, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I complimented your painting behind you before we started recording, before I even knew that you painted it. It is absolutely beautiful. Some kids on the beach, absolutely beautiful paintings. That wouldn't be the worst thing, but you're right. I think we have a bigger kind of sense of a mission to get this message out there. And this message for you did start, like we talked about in the introduction, with your children primarily, before it was your own health that was a concern. It was the health of your children.
That's right. We lived in a beautiful area in England. We had our two children, two under two, so super busy, and we were pretty healthy, and we ate, I thought, really healthily. Made my homemade pasta. We ate pasta quite a bit. Had snacks, and then when I had children and wanted to clean up our foods, I ended up making homemade treats instead. So we didn't buy any junk or chocolate bars or ice creams or takeaways or takeouts. So I would make these date treats for the children with dark chocolate and all of those types of things. It wasn't until later that I realized how much I'd increased their sugar load by those 50 to 70% date treats that I was making, thinking they were all natural. But I started to look into nutrition firstly with my son, because he just had skin complaints. Lots of children do. They have cradle cap, bit of eczema, and it progressed and progressed. He was really uncomfortable. Summer nights when it was really hot, he was distressed. He couldn't sleep properly, and I think it was we tried elimination diets, and we tried natural remedy creams that people suggested. We went to different doctors and different consultants. We changed hospital, and I had a conversation with, I remember one particular consultant, and I was saying, right, so now we have his hair's falling out in bunches. We have alopecia. We've got this urticaria, the welts that are appearing when he eats something or when he touches wood. Mold spores, perhaps that was causing that. And then we've got eczema, so he's bleeding in the same places again and again in the creases of his elbow. So what linking all of this, and what's the underlying cause that's at the bottom of it all? And he was like, with the NHS, we're going to treat this topically, each one separately. We're not going to look into it, and we're not going to link them. So try this next cream, try these steroids, and off you go. And it was, I suppose then it was just a light bulb moment of like, we need to get to this ourselves. We're not going to get to the bottom of it otherwise. So did a lot of research and ended up putting him on what I called at the time a gut healing food protocol. and very much GAPS inspired, Western A Price inspired, if you've probably come across those and talked about those types of approaches. And it was very much really, really great quality meat, stews, casseroles, but no fruit. Took away all those sweet date things that I was making, off a lot of what typically families would eat. And it was very repetitive, very few vegetables. And yeah, within weeks we noticed a difference, and he's never had hair fall out since. Everything improved within 3 months. We were on a beach, we went on holiday, and I remember seeing him in the water, and his skin was just glowing, and it was healthy, it had all recovered, and he wasn't crying from the salt water like the last time. It was game changing, and it was the only thing we'd changed radically was his food. So then it was just understanding how quickly you can heal. It was within 1 to 2 weeks, that he stopped scratching his skin, and then it took weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks to recover then from all the damage he'd done. But it was the itching had gone. So yeah, off we were, really fascinated then with the power of food. Tallow was a big part of our food journey. We started making our own tallow, and eating a lot more fat, a lot more red meat. And it was absolutely delicious as well.
That sounds amazing. I'm curious, like after going through all the different creams and potions and treating everything separately, like you said, what gave you the idea that the common link might be nutrition? I think most people wouldn't even consider that that would be the thing that would influence all of those things. What made you have that idea?
I think that's probably a good point. I think we suspected food because it's what you put in. And I do think that a lot of families, when they've got something like an allergy, or not an allergy, but an intolerance or reaction to food, when you talk to somebody who's breastfeeding, for example, and the child isn't sleeping, I think they often naturally, instinctively go to, oh, what am I eating? I think there's a little bit of knowledge there that there's some connection to food and what we're putting in our body. I think the disconnect is we don't know where to go with that, because we've had such poor messaging, and the wisdom of food has been lost. So I think I had my husband too, who's totally on board, and he did a lot of research. We did a lot of reading, and then I think it was just I feel like we went down some wrong turns with what we looked into, but it was having an instinct that it would be what you're putting inside your body could make a difference. And we were lucky that it had such drastic impact on him. And we also were making skin balms for him as well to nourish his skin out of tallow. So tallow was a huge theme. So we were treating it topically ourselves as well.
Yeah, I love my tallow skincare products. Such a game changer. Really just it helps your skin feel lovely. I love it.
We all,
It's
I was
what's
going to say
that?
we did smell, because we were making our own. We did smell like a roast dinner most days.
Well, I just asked a skincare expert who makes tallow skin products how you can make tallow products at home without making them smell. I guess you can kind of like, she described it as like washing. Is that something that you ever tried with your tallow products?
Yeah, and it's clarification, it's repeated clarification, and at a low temperature to preserve the nutrients as well. Um, yeah, it depends how far you want to go with it, and the equipment that you've got. And if you're being lazy, you just smell more of roast dinner. But we definitely got it. We definitely got it cleaner, and a nicer smell as well, yeah, and softer as well.
Okay, lovely. That was a purely selfish question. I have jars and jars of tallow that I have no idea what to do with. I'm not exactly ready to smell like a roast more than I already do, only eating carnivore anyway. So I really, really appreciate that information.
Okay.
I love how you describe like the messaging that we're getting, and this is so much your area of expertise is the message that people get about food, and especially when it pertains to ultra processed foods. And like I'm going through a seminar series that I'm preparing that I'm going to be doing in my neighborhood. Hopefully, people show up for it. Where I'm going to be talking to people about all aspects of nutrition. We're going to do it the same day for all weeks during the summer, and I'm really trying to be diet agnostic. I don't necessarily want to tell everybody they have to do the keto diet, they have to do the carnivore diet, they have to eat in a certain way. But it's interesting when you consider some of the things that we talk about in nutrition, you kind of get backed into a corner where there's not very many like viable options of good foods that you can eat. And almost by default, you're kind of eating a low carb carnivore diet if you want to have really good health in so many different aspects. And it seems to me that the biggest antithesis to that is the ultra processed foods. So can you tell us a little bit about how we define ultra processed foods and why the messaging around these foods has been so poor for so long?
Yeah. So what is an ultra processed food? It's a bit of a mouthful. I'm not sure if families are using those terms. I think they're still using terms like fast food, junk food, sweets, cakes. You know, a dietitian type world talk would call it discretionary foods, but it's foods that are in a packet predominantly. They have labeling. If they have like health food claims, health messaging, they're probably trying to sell you ultra processed foods. So ultra processed foods have got generally more than 5 ingredients. They have ingredients that you would not be able to buy locally, and you would not be able to process them in the same way. So you would not be able to replicate that product in your own kitchen with normal kitchen equipment. So it's typically mass produced through processing that we would not be able to do at home with ingredients we would not be able to buy at home, and often just pick up anything your listeners might be near in a shop or in a supermarket or something that kids have brought home in a packet, and you'll be able to spot ingredients that you just would not be able to buy, but you wouldn't maybe able to be pronounce, and we don't fully actually know what they are as well, those ingredients. I think that's the key thing in a packet and too many ingredients, and does not look like the original ingredients. So like an example might be corn is an unprocessed corn on the cob is an unprocessed food, and then you move that on and you've got popcorn, minimally processed, and then you're moving it on to minimally processed, maybe a sweet, and then you go up and up the line to more processed. So then you're looking at an ultra processed food out of corn would be a type of cereal, like do you have Rice Krispies or Rice Pops over there?
Yeah.
Something like that. And then the corn chips as well. And then you've got the fructose, the corn syrups and things as well. So that's an example of how we get an ingredient, and then we take it all the way through extraction, extrusion and heating, and then baking, and then with the cereals and the chips, then we're coating it with chemical crap and flavoring it, and then packing it, sometimes with a nice healthy looking picture of corn on it to show that once upon a time might have had some nutritional value in it. And then often we being the manufacturers, and it's being allowed by the governments, they're then fortifying it with synthetic nutrients and vitamins, and then selling it as a product fit for human consumption. But not only that, it's being sold as something that's actually of value to us nutritionally. And the more and more evidence that comes out, and thank goodness for the researchers that put these huge studies together, and it takes such a long time, they've been pushing the information that that really should be obvious to us, that this stuff is really detrimental to health. And it's just, that's the key thing here, that we're in a huge wave of chronic ill health, metabolic ill health, mental ill health, and we've got fundraisers that are earning millions and millions of pounds, and institutions looking for the solution everywhere under every rock going, but our supermarkets are pushing this stuff to us and selling the stuff that's actually making us ill, our children's ill, and our mums ill. So yeah, it's quite an odd world when you take a huge step back and look at it. And your second part of that question was what's gone wrong with the marketing, the messaging, and how we've got to this stage, that type of thing. I guess really looking back from the 50s, the marketing was actually convenience food when it first came out. Don't know if you'll find this interesting, Casey, but it wasn't popular. It did not take off. It wasn't as people often refer to it, as a quick thing that people took to, and women were so happy with. They were families generally en masse were mistrusting of these new food products, so they went to the food, not the food, they went to the marketeers and the advertisements, and they started to learn what type of messaging would work, and they sold convenient food products as better for families, better for the health. If you wanted to do the right thing for your family, you would you would have these new gadgets, this new equipment, and this new type of food in your home, and they did a good job. And there was also, and there is also, the convenient element. We now have families, and how busy everybody is, how busy we are, for example, we were discussing, and time, we are time poor. So we've got to a point where it's really difficult to actually unravel this now, even when people know it's harmful. It's so culturally part of their upbringing, part of their what the work colleagues are eating, what they're having in schools, what their kids' friends are having, that it's so difficult to unravel. It's almost easier to just put the blinkers back on and hope one of these major charities are going to uncover a cure suddenly.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting. Excuse me. When you talk about it as like you see the front of the package of cold cereal is a great example. I walked through the cold cereal aisle about a week ago. I don't normally walk through the cold cereal aisle, but to check out like which cereals have the labels that say they're heart healthy, they're high in fiber, they have vitamins and minerals and all these things. The normal consumer is not going to flip that around and know how to read the ingredients when we have like 80 something different names of sugar, and people don't understand the harms of seed oils, how these things are processed, let alone all the chemicals and dyes and all the stuff that goes into it. They just see the front and it says, oh, this is heart healthy, or this has this amount of fiber. That's a minuscule amount versus all the sugar and crap that they get. And then just to think about the addictive nature of that kind of food and how unsatisfying it is, how it doesn't satiate anybody. It forces people into eating again and again and again and again, and it just compounds the problem, makes things so much worse.
Yeah, and then, like you're saying, we're in that loop, and then we have that disconnect with the chronic ill health, and how weight gain and certain diagnoses start creeping in as we go through our 30s and 40s and 50s, and then people putting that all down to aging. But now we're seeing that children, we've been seeing this increase over years, overweight children, obesity in children in America. It's absolutely shocking statistics. And then we have other issues. We have stunting. So we've got children that are underweight, and they're malnourished but overfed with these foods, because the body reacts in different ways. You can be malnourished and overweight, but you can be malnourished and underweight. In the UK and in the US, actually, children are not meeting their height growth potential. So they've done studies and they've looked at this, and children in some European countries that have a high meat and dairy intake of 7 centimeters taller than US children and UK children, and
Wow.
because of the quality of food. I think that's a really unknown fact. I think we often put this, often the public and often people think about this in terms of, with sugar and processed food and junk food, in terms of a weight issue alone. But the fact that children aren't meeting their height potential, I think it's really telling about the quality of what they're eating, and also the type of foods that they're eating, and more importantly, they're not eating, and we're being kind of advised not to. And then other things like in America particularly, but other countries definitely, like Australia's hot on the heels, and so is the UK, like rates of diagnosis for different types of conditions like ADHD and ADD. The prescription rate in Australia has gone through the roof of people having prescriptions for medications. And that's definitely, again, linked to, I mean, they call it linked to lifestyle, but if we break down what we mean by lifestyle, food is a major component of those issues.
Yeah. Well, I love how you've taken the approach of trying to help children with all of this. And you're right, with all of those conditions on the rise at crazy rates. I don't know. It's so sad to see how quickly all of these have gone up like exponentially in the last few years. The ADHD, like you mentioned, being a big part of that. It's almost so ubiquitous now, especially like around me. And you go walk around parks and there's litter everywhere. And it's all snack foods and crap and a bunch of sugar. It sucks. But this has been part of your crusade is to try to get this message out. And again, what we mentioned in the introduction with the Sugar-Free Family online course that you were able to do with some of my very favorite people, none less than Peter Bruckner, who's just a riot to hang out with. It's so funny.
It's so
Um,
hilarious.
he's a great guy. Loved hanging out with him. Tell us about that online course. How has been your experience trying to get this message out to families in particular and try to help people reduce, at the very least, just get rid of sugar and processed foods?
I think families have been my passion in this, and it's the area that most, that I work with it the most because I saw the impact for my two children, and also because I feel that this is where it starts, and the next generation, are coming through are really, really up against it with the additional load of increasing soft drinks and energy drinks and ultra processed food and just junk foods. So in my way of trying to do what I can as well as the podcast is I put together with my husband a sugar-free course, and that's it's quite simple. It's free, it's online, it's on leafy.org, as you mentioned, the website. So you can sign up, and it just gives some recipes, some snacks and tips. And we managed to get maybe around 12 people, Dr. Trudy Deakin and lots of others that you've mentioned, Professor Tim Noakes and Peter Bruckner, to give their top tips and strategies for helping people to make these changes. So it's because a lot of what you can do, I think what puts people off is an idea of perfection, and that's definitely not what we're going for. What I'm passionate about is to help people head off these illnesses, this chronic ill health, and try and live healthier and have that information. So it's about the swaps and the tips and the changes that you can make. So that's something that we've put together. And then the other thing I do is I save one day, no matter what project I'm working on, which I like, a lot of different kind of nutrition projects that I work on, but I try to save one day for coaching. And I emphasize that I work with families mostly, and I'm working with more and more families with children with diagnosis of autism or behaviors that are suspected ADHD, whether they've got the diagnosis or not there. And then it's absolutely, I really, really love it because of all of these areas. Sometimes, you see change in people. I've worked with people who've got off diabetes medication. I've worked with people who've got off statins when I worked with the NHS, which is awesome, helping them and supporting them. But there's something for me really, really special about working with a family, particularly one that thinks that there's no hope and their child would never ever swap their foods and be able to manage these food changes. There's something so really rewarding for me in working with those and giving them the support and tailoring it and coming up with strategies for them, and then seeing a difference in children's communication and their behaviour. And we were lucky enough to do one project with a school, a special education needs school, and saw really different types of improvements. And then recently I've working with a few families, and they're giving me the feedback that's just brilliant, that their child is communicating more, able to interact, and it's really different for different children. But one of them that I worked with recently, it's that he stopped biting and he stopped being aggressive and he stopped having crying meltdowns. So it really does range, but I get I really, really do enjoy that type of work.
That's amazing. I love what you said about perfection, where a lot of us in the low carb community are squabbling about what we define as ketogenic and how if somebody's strict carnivore or just animal based or meat centric and all these different terms. whatever. Sometimes we just miss the entire point that we just need to do a little bit better. And if you just go walk around a grocery store, go walk around the mall or the airport, you see how bad it is out there. We could take little steps just to help that. I remember asking Nina this question, Nina Teichels. I know you're involved with the Nutrition Coalition as well that she founded. I remember asking her this question a few years ago, and I want to say she wasn't disappointed. I don't think that's the right word, but she was just a little bit bummed out that like she'd started the coalition. She thought that by getting in front of senators around here in America and getting the message out that we could at least start to shift change and people would notice it, and it just hadn't really gotten out as much as she had hoped, I think. And so it wasn't that she was pessimistic or had wished she hadn't done it. It's just that she had done an incredible amount of work and thought the ball would have moved a little bit further forward. But I think, again, that's a big macro kind of a scale, right? That's pushing big change. What you're describing is finding anybody who is willing to listen, any kind of family especially, to try to get that message in. And the joy that you feel just from sharing your message, not necessarily based on the number of millions of people that are receiving the message, but the joy in helping an individual or a family see that change. For somebody that's listening and is wanting to share this message, but they don't know how, they don't feel like they have a voice, they haven't started a podcast like you. What kind of advice would you give to a person like that would want to kind of share their message and get it out there?
Yeah, I think because I was in that position where when you see the power of this food and this change and you're feeling amazing, and I felt very lucky that we'd made these big changes to our children's health. So I wanted to get the word out, and I've tried different approaches. And what I would say to people is work within your own community is a great idea, but it really depends on your own skill set, where you are, and what and how you can. Some people are very technically minded. Some people like to work behind the scenes, so they could connect with a local organisation and volunteer in different ways. So I work a little with Low Carb Down Under, as you mentioned, and we have volunteers at every conference who just can give their time for that one day. Then other people manage the Facebook groups of these different organisations that you've mentioned: Public Health Collaboration, Low Carb Down Under, and the Nutrition Coalition and the Nutrition Network. Awesome non-profit organisations trying to help. So you can connect in one of those, but also within your local community. It's really great to start to put education into nurseries and playgroups in schools, and that can be done in a really gentle way, rather than a sledgehammer approach, because people are just maybe not there yet because they haven't got the education. So one thing I did with my local school in England was initially I volunteered to give some presentations and some talks, and that eventually over a few years led to me delivering a regular sugar-free cooking club, which was so much fun, and watching these children and helping them and support them make full meals and grow their skills and their capacities, and try ingredients and touch ingredients and learn how to cook. And then, giving talks in the assemblies, giving information out regularly in the school newsletter, giving talks to parents and supporting workshops that were happening and events at school. So doing that type of thing could be possible if that's within your comfort zone. And then within the UK, they have volunteers that take the information from these great organisations and then they write to their local MP. Pester power, they rock up at the MP's office, or they write to them or email them, and they make it known that this is an issue and it's important to them and they want change. And some of our politicians are listening. It's complicated why change hasn't happened. I think conflicts of interest and the way governments are funded is an enormous part of it, and just things are slow. But these organisations are making an impact. So the American dietary guidelines for Americans, and the conflicts of interest that the Nutrition Coalition found were diabolical. There was one member of the committee with 130 ties to industry, taking money, taking grants. They did an enormous, Nina and her team did an enormous piece of work to uncover that. Otherwise, the public wouldn't know. So Australia are now under their review process. and they have had to work much harder and be much more stringent about who is on their panel, because of that type of information that's come out of America, because they know people are scrutinizing what they're doing. So these things do have an impact, and there were a few changes that have happened in America as a result. Not enough, to be fair, but you can see why our guidelines and our food health star ratings are so just they don't make any sense, basically. And you can see why when you see who these the advisory panels are working with.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, the nice thing about your response was that anybody out there who's listening can make a difference. They can do something. It might not change the world, like we said, but it takes all of us to share this message in whatever capacity we have, in whatever way possible. Like you said, it might take some creativity, but there are ways that people can participate. So I love that message. Claire, unfortunately, because of our time difference, you are up way past what would be my bedtime, and I need to start my work day. So unfortunately, we didn't ever have too much time today, but we really wanted to make this work. I'd love to host you again sometime when we can make the times work. For now, I just want to say this has been a really, really lovely chat. Thank you so much for working together to make this happen. I think people will walk away from this conversation feeling very empowered and know that they can help be part of changing the world. But for now, where can people go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Well, thank you for all that, and I feel the same. It was really valuable to connect with you as well. If people do want to find out more about my work and connect, then Family Health Lab is my podcast. It's mainly on YouTube, but we're on all of the platforms, Apple, Spotify, and I'd really love people to mainly to comment and get involved with that in terms of what they enjoyed and what they'd like to hear more of. That would be cool. And then, if they want to hear about my organization, leafy.org, they can jump on there and contact me directly through that. And you found me through LinkedIn, which was really nice to chat with you on there.
It was really nice to chat with you on there as well. I love your podcast, like I said earlier. We'll be sure to link all of that, Claire. Thank you so very much for this conversation. Again, it was short but very sweet, and I think people will take away a lot of empowerment from this conversation, knowing that you were able to make change in your family, and now the scale that you're making change is much greater. But it all started with just within your own family, and even there is a really good starting place. And so, again, I think this will be very empowering for people. I just really appreciate you and your message and your willingness to do this interview at a late time where you are in Perth or near the western coast of Australia. So thank you so very much for taking the time to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Casey. Really appreciate you and all your work too. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.